Go ahead, Sheriff.
All rise.
Thank you, Sheriff. Y'all be seated. Call your next witness, please.
Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen, the jury, at this time, the defense calls Melissa Burke. I apologize to the court. She had stepped away for a moment.
Come on
Sorry,
up.
Judge.
It's not a problem. Before you have a seat on the witness stand, you don't have to move that fast. I want you to get hurt again. You could please raise your right hand. You swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth.
Yes, sir.
Please have a seat. You're responding to questions first from Ms. Madsen, I believe, and perhaps also Mr. Lewis or Ms. Nicholson, who's directly from you. May proceed.
Ma'am, will you state your name for the record?
Melissa Burke,
And how are you employed?
as a probation officer in the 292nd Court.
On January 31st of 2017, did you have an occasion to interact with a Virgilio Rosales?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you have a conversation with him about what happened in the car on January 18th of 2017?
A brief conversation, yes.
You'll object to hearsay with regard to anything that Mr. Rosales told the witness.
Any reply?
Yes, Your Honor. The contents of this are statements against interest, a present sense impression, and a state of mind at the time.
Any reply to that?
I'd like to take the witness on with our,
In the presence or outside the presence?
outside the presence of the jury.
Very good. Members of the jury, if you would please go with the sheriff and await further instructions. Y'all may be seated. Ms. Madsen, I'm going to let you lead the witness for your proffer. Go ahead.
Ms. Burke, when you spoke to Mr. Rosales, did you have a conversation with him about what took place on the night of January 18th, 2017?
I'm not exactly sure of the date, but I had a brief conversation with him about the incident, yes.
And this was on January 31st of 2017?
If that's the date from my computer notes, yes, ma'am.
And this was about what was going on that night in that car, correct?
It didn't start that way, but yes.
And at one point, did he make a statement that the police shot and killed his wife?
He responded affirmatively to my question asked.
What was your question asked?
Can I see the paper?
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
When I talked to him, Mr. Rosales initially stated he didn't do anything wrong. They were just in a car and the police killed his wife. I asked if his wife was the woman in the stolen car, and he stated she was. He stated the police shot and killed her. I told him I advised him that I didn't know the details except what was on the news, but asked if she attempted to run the police officers down, and Mr. Rosales stated yes, but they didn't have to shoot her that many times.
And so at the time, he was trying to tell you that he didn't do anything wrong, correct?
Yes.
And you were confronting him on what they were trying to do when they were driving that car in reverse.
Yes, I asked him a question.
And he said, basically you said what, and I will just read it again. You asked if she attempted to run the officers down, and he stated yes.
Correct.
And that, he was giving you his impressions of what was going on at that time, correct?
I assume so.
And he was talking about what was in their mind at that time, what they were attempting to do.
Only based on what he told me, yes.
Ask the witness.
Mr. Lewis?
May I see the document, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. What section were you just reading from?
Right here.
Okay.
3117, 117, straight
Right
right there.
Sure. Ms. Burke, and so you were asked a question, and you said that it didn't start that way. I guess the conversation or how it got to that particular point.
Yes.
What do you mean that it didn't start that way?
Mr. Rosales was in jail on a probation violation, and that's what I was talking to him about initially, was about how he violated his probation. And then he started off talking about his wife because he was very upset.
Okay. And so he made this statement to you that his wife tried to run the officers down. Is that what your understanding was from that statement?
Yes, sir.
This is from his point of view, or did he tell you that, let me ask it this way. Did he get into any background about where that particular opinion came from?
No.
Okay. So he didn't say that this, my wife told me I was trying to run him down or anything like that. So you don't know the circumstances surrounding why he gave you that opinion?
No, sir.
Could have been something that he just came up with, right?
It could have been anything.
Right.
I just know what he told me.
And this is in with regard to, you said probation violation he was here for?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so obviously that entails his criminal history, right?
At least one charge, yes.
Was there any other, besides this particular document, are there any other documents, any other recordings that may have recorded this particular statement that he gave to you about this?
There's not a recording, and that is the only conversation I had with him regarding that. So that's the only written paperwork. It's in the computer, but that's the only printed document I have.
And obviously this was January 31st, 2017, so this was not at the time that the shooting occurred. This would have been well after that, obviously.
I don't honestly know the original date of the offense, so I can't say yes or no.
Okay, if the date of the offense was January the 18th, 2017, and this was the 31st, this would not have been at the same time as the events were occurring, right?
Correct.
And obviously, the victim in this case, was deceased at that time, so she didn't tell you anything about what her intentions were at that time, right?
I did not speak to her.
No further question, Your Honor.
There you go. All your arguments of counsel about the admissibility of that statement. You're offering it as, you believe it said a present sense impression as well as a state of mind at the time that, whose state of mind are you offering that for?
Both parties' state of mind, Your Honor. This is the passenger. I would submit to the court that the state has made this extremely relevant with their extensive questions about there's no way to know what was in either of their state of mind. There's no way to know when they woke up. Isn't it possible they are sleeping? There's no way to know that they even knew officers were there. The state has stated in numerous of their questions to the witnesses that there's no way to know. That makes this relevant, and it makes both parties' state of mind relevant, and both parties, their actions in that car, what they knew at the time, what their motivations were relevant. In terms of hearsay exceptions, I would state that this is a statement against penal interest. It started off by him saying, I did nothing wrong, and then he's being confronted with things he did do wrong and then making concessions.
Wait. He's not saying what he did. He's saying what somebody else told him.
I would submit to you that they are
How is that a penal statement against his own penal interest?
They are parties. He is in that car. He has failed to get out. He has failed to yield to officers' show of authority. He has failed to take actions to distance himself to this when he very well could have. In that, he is complicit in the crimes and not complying with officers. And you have to keep in mind that this was an ongoing situation where multiple decisions were made, and at no time did he get out and yield to the officer's commands. Additionally, it is a present sense impression of the parties and a state of mind of the parties at the time.
Okay. Mr. Lewis, any reply?
We would object, Your Honor. Not a present sense impression is not given at the time that the events were occurring. With respect to state of mind and statement against penal interest, it's very clear from this testimony that this had nothing to do with Ms. Dawes. The witness cannot state at all regard to the circumstances surrounding the statement. It would be unfair to attribute this to the victim, because again, this is coming from Ms. Gonzalez. It has nothing to do with Ms. Dawes, who at the time obviously was deceased and could not provide any information or even confirm whether or not it was in her head at that time. So on those grounds, we object. And further, it also violates the court's ruling as pertains to the state's motion of limiting with regard to any witness's criminal history in this case, and that's exactly in the realm of where this came from, talking to his probation officer.
All right. I'm going to sustain the state's objections to all these statements.
Your Honor, I would submit to the court that the state has opened this door by repeatedly saying there is no way to know what took place in that car. Additionally, I cannot in any way say that this was his probation officer, simply that she was an officer of this court and had occasion to visit with him. I did not go into those occasions. And the state has left a gross, false impression in the jury's mind that these two people had no idea that officers were there, that they were sleeping, and that there was no way to have further information. Additionally, the state has relied on motions in this case from this probation department to revoke his probation. This was within the DA's office's knowledge. They knew these statements. This was within their knowledge. They knew this. They acted upon it. There is a public record of the court of them talking to the court about it. And they have deliberately, repeatedly, in this case, told the jury that there's no way to know what these people were doing in this car, when we have explicit proof that there was evidence of what was going on in this car.
Well, the rules of hearsay disagree with you. I'm not saying they're not relevant. I'm saying that they're hearsay. They're inadmissible. That's the Texas rules of evidence. It couldn't be any clearer. You have not persuaded the court as the proponent of the evidence that the statements that you wish to get into are not hearsay. I'm sustaining the objection. Is there anything else from Ms. Burke, or is there another area that you wish to call her? Can she stand down?
May I have a moment?
Yes.
I just do what I'm told. Just what I wanted to be on the news.
May Ms. Burke be excused.
No objection, Mr. Secretary.
Tell you what, subject to recall. Ma'am, you can stand down. Call your next witness. You ready to call your next witness?
May I be allowed to ask her questions about whether or not she had a conversation with the passenger of that vehicle about what was going on, and whether or not those were in her records,
Yeah,
what
go
that
ahead.
conversation was
Sure.
in front of the jury?
No.
No further questions?
That's it. Call your next, we're going to call the jurors. Get your
Your
witness
Honor,
ready.
we need a break for the next witness. You need to put something on record for him. His attorney is here and we are ready.
Okay. Who is this? I'm dying to get testimony in front of the jury today. Who is the next witness?
Officer Kempell, and I would love to
All
get
right.
testimony. I am
Who
trying
is
to
the
get
lawyer? Excuse me. Who's the
Robert
lawyer?
Rogers. He is in the courtroom
Mr.
now.
Rogers, can you come up here, please? How you doing, Mr. Rogers?
Good morning.
Welcome. You are the attorney for who?
Jason Kempell.
Is there anything that we need to put on the record before we bring him in front of the jury, or before we bring him in court today? You need to approach.
Can I approach the sidebar?
Sure.
Mr. Rogers, would you mind getting your client?
Yes, sir.
Sir, if you would please raise your right hand. We're on the record, we're outside the presence of the jury. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes, sir.
Can you have a seat? I'm not sure, I don't think I've ever met you before. Tell me your name.
Jason Kempell?
All right, very good. Mr. Rogers is your attorney, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Rogers? I'm going to first yield the floor to you. Is there anything that we need to put on the record right now before I ask what the substance of this testimony is going to be?
Just, Officer Kempell, you understand that, as with anyone, that anyone in your situation, you have a Fifth Amendment right not to testify.
Yes, sir.
Correct. And we discussed that right.
Yes, sir.
And is it your decision to invoke your Fifth Amendment right, or are you waiving that right, and do you intend to testify?
I intend to testify.
Nothing further.
Mr. Lewis?
Just briefly, Your Honor, the state would offer an oral motion if they made with regard to, this was another officer who fired that night, and he was not charged by the grand jury. I would ask that the defense not go into, move to ask any questions or refer to the fact that he was not charged from this shooting before the jury.
You intend on getting into that?
I do intend to go into his current employment, that he is currently being an officer and being routed and having his testimony sponsored by the state.
We would object to that as well. The court has already ruled that the
Hang on,
defense
just,
cannot.
hold on, I'm going to let you talk. Mr. Lewis said he didn't want it about this not being the indictment, or the lack of indictment, lack of charge. Are you intending on getting into the lack of a charge?
I do believe that it is important to note that he is the other officer that shot his weapon and that he is not currently facing criminal charges. Beyond that, I did not go into I did not intend to go into it anymore.
All right, Mr. Lewis, you object to that?
Object to,
That he's not been
Yes,
charged
I do.
before?
yeah, that would give the jury a false impression that this was, again, a justified shooting, which the grand jury found it was not.
Okay. So that's area number one. Are there any other areas that you wish to ask the officer about?
The facts of the case, why he chose to shoot, why he believed it was reasonable, what his beliefs were based on, why he stopped shooting.
Are you going to ask him to give any ultimate opinion?
As to Officer Hess,
Yes.
no. I do intend to ask him if it would be reasonable that Officer Hess would still believe that he was over there.
Sure.
With regard to the first point about him not being charged, I would also add the state objects because it's not relevant. And with regard to him giving an opinion as to whether or not it was reasonable for the defendant to believe that there were officers behind the vehicle, that goes into the ultimate issue as to whether the shooting in and of itself was reasonable. And we object on that due to the fact that he's not qualified as an expert witness.
Your Honor, more specifically, I'm not asking him if it's reasonable for Officer Hess to believe officers. If it's reasonable for Officer Hess to believe that he, based upon what he knows about where he was and the route he took to get cover.
Based upon what he knows?
Yes.
This witness as opposed to he being Hess?
Correct. Based upon what this witness knows about his own actions, his own route for cover, his own observations.
In this business about him testifying or not in other cases, do you intend on getting into that? And if so, why?
I simply intend to talk about that he is still a Dallas police officer in full active duty.
But
All that, yes.
you had said something about testifying in other cases. Are you intending on getting into that?
No, not in any depth, other than that he is an officer operating.
I didn't interrupt, but I believe she stated that she intends to get into the fact that the state allowed this witness and didn't call him. And I believe that the court has already ruled that the defense cannot make any statements as pertains to the way that the state decided to try this case.
Okay. Obviously, I'm going to allow him to testify about anything that he perceived that night, any conclusions that he drew then based on his own actions, his own experience. I don't want him to say whether he thought what Officer Hess did was reasonable or not. He's not qualified to do that. He can certainly share with the jurors in the same way that it looks like Evans, Lickwar, Hopkins, that type of testimony, what they believed at the time based on what they saw, why they did certain things, where they were located, whether based on what they were perceiving other officers could have seen them at certain points in time, not as a conclusion, but based on what they see and what they perceived. I'll let you get into the fact that obviously he's still employed as a Dallas police officer. I don't want anybody to mention Robert Rogers' name on the record as being represented. No offense to you, Mr. Rogers.
Don't need to be any more records.
And that's very funny. I also am going to rule that it's more prejudicial and probative that he was not charged by a grand jury in this case, or not indicted, or that there's no charges pending. I find that to be more prejudicial than probative. Is there anything else before we bring the jurors in? Any other clarification that you need or anything else that you need to put on the record before we call the jurors back?
Yes, Your Honor, I would like to go into that he was subpoenaed by both the state and the defense.
That's fair. I'll let you do that. Is there anything else?
No, please.
Okay, very good. Sheriff? Ms. Wood, how you doing?
Well, I'm still here.
You need a break?
No, sir, I'm good.
Just breathe and tell the truth about everything, okay?
Go ahead, Sheriff.
All rise.
Thank you, Sheriff. Y'all may be seated. Sir, if you could please turn and face me and raise your right hand. You swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Put your hand down. Ms. Madsen, it's your witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer Kempell, will you introduce yourself to the jury, please?
I'm Officer Jason Kempell, Dallas Police Department.
How are you currently employed?
I'm currently a police officer with the Dallas Police Department assigned to patrol.
Assigned to patrol?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you pull
What
that
do you-
microphone a little bit closer? Thank you so much.
What do you do as part of your assignment?
Answer calls for service, traffic enforcement, investigate accidents.
Tell this jury, what is a beat?
A beat is a breakdown of the area of the city that we work. There's divisions, then there's sectors, then there's beats. So each officer is assigned a specific beat inside the sector, which is inside their division, which is inside, there's 7 divisions in the entire city.
Fair that's a breakdown so that when citizens call 911, we try to strategically have officers positioned in geographical areas to get there quick, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And let me turn your attention to January 18th of 2017. Do you remember that night?
Yes, ma'am.
What beat were you assigned to?
I believe 114.
And what part of the city?
So that is Old East Dallas, specifically the 10s are south of Gaston, and then they go down by where the I guess it'd be the east side of the fairgrounds. Yeah, east side of the fairgrounds.
Who were you riding with that night?
Officer Hess.
Were you dispatched on a 911 call regarding a suspicious vehicle?
We were.
What information did you have at that point?
I don't remember 100% what the call sheet said. I remember that while en route there, we found out the vehicle was stolen, or it came back stolen, and that's all I can really remember exact details on the call sheet.
Were you the first to arrive?
No.
Who was the first to arrive? Do you know? I guess who was there when you arrived?
Hopkins, Alish, and Evans, and Liquor.
4 other officers?
Yes, ma'am.
What did you do upon arrival?
When we got there, we parked our car behind another car, another police car.
Another squad car?
Yes,
okay.
ma'am. We exited and we went back in the parking lot, and when we got there, we could see where the other officers were positioned, or where they were at around the car.
Okay. And what did you do at that point?
I walked over to where I believe Officer Hopkins and Evans were at, on the next to a covered parking area, and they were giving commands to the vehicle.
Were the commands, could you hear them as you approached?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what was said, but something along the lines of Dallas Police, let me see your hands, get out of the car, those types of commands.
What did you do upon approaching them?
I remember walking up to the car and shining my light on the car. I remember there was like a brief discussion about if there was anybody in the car. Nobody really seemed to know. We weren't getting any response. And so there was kind of like some small talk between us, I think, trying to figure out what we were going to do next.
What did you decide to do next?
So what I remember is that Hess said he was going to go get the car. He went and got the car and pulled it up to behind the car, and I.
Okay, let's differentiate. He pulled up what car?
Dallas Police car.
Okay, was it the car you arrived in?
No,
He grabbed one of the squad cars and pulled it up?
the one that was in front of us. Yes.
Okay, and then what happened?
He pulled the car up.
The squad car?
The squad car. I'm sorry. Pulled the squad car up, kind of at an angle behind the vehicle. I can't remember the exact sequence of events, but we were still yelling at the car, and we attempted to. I believe when he pulled it up, he hit the siren on it as well, the siren and the air horn. We were standing next to the car, and we were trying to figure out what we were going to do because there was still no response.
Is this a situation where you are trying to let the occupants of the car know who you are and to comply with your commands?
Objection legal.
Overruled. Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
How are you doing that?
Yelling Dallas Police, hitting the siren, let us see your hands, get out of the car, just trying to get some type of reaction from the occupants.
Did you get a reaction from the occupants?
Eventually, yes.
At that time, had you got a reaction from the occupants?
No.
What do you guys do at that point?
I believe Officer Hopkins moves up to the rear passenger side of the car and tries to pull the door handle on the car. I think we all kind of realized that might not have been the smartest, safest move. So he pulled on the door handle, it was locked, and at that point we backed up away from the vehicle.
Is that the moment you realized that the car was occupied?
It might have been shortly after that, I believe.
And then after you backed up, where did you go?
When we backed up, I backed up and I was on the driver's side of the vehicle, but behind the vehicle.
And then what happens next?
We're still giving commands, and we're kind of trying to figure out what the next step was going to be, and then the car turns on. At that point, Hess gets in the car and pulls the Dallas police car up closer. The vehicle backs up and strikes the car, and then there's like a brief pause. Car goes into drive and accelerates towards the fence.
Does it hit the fence?
Yes,
Does it accelerate once it hits the fence?
for a second, yes, ma'am.
What are you thinking at that moment?
Trying to figure out what's going to happen next. I saw, because of the actions, I saw the vehicle hit the squad car, and then try to obviously accelerate through that fence. And we have no idea what's going on at that point.
Are you worried about what's gonna happen next?
Yes,
Why?
because the car's moving around aggressively, in my opinion, and we have no way of knowing what's going to happen.
Had you given multiple commands for the occupants of the car to get out?
Yes, ma'am.
Had they complied?
No, ma'am.
Did you try to be as loud as possible?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you believe that it was possible? Let me rephrase that. Do you believe the occupants would be aware that you were there?
Objection, speculation.
If it's based on your own experience, how loud you all were, in your opinion, you can answer the question. If you don't have an opinion, then please say that.
I believe that they probably would have heard at one point, certainly after we had seen movement in the vehicle.
And at this point, you have the squad car and then all of the officers in uniform,
Yes, ma'am.
and you guys are identifying yourselves repeatedly?
Yes, ma'am.
Officer Kempell, in order to save time and not go through all of this twice, you had a body-worn camera on that night, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And the state's already admitted that body-worn camera.
Okay.
I'm gonna play this body-worn camera, and at moments I'll stop it to question you about it, okay?
Okay.
Is this where we see you guys approaching the apartment complex?
Yes, ma'am.
Driver! Put your hand out the window! Nope. I can't even tell.
Permission to have the witness step down.
Go ahead.
Officer Kempell, I'm going to show you what's previously been marked and shown to this jury, Defense Exhibit 11, a diagram that was done by the PES, Physical Evidence Section of Dallas Police Department. Do you recognize this?
Yes.
Okay. And does it somewhat represent the scene as it was that night?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Fair to say there's not the number of cars aren't accurately represented, correct?
Yes.
And is the position of the car labeled A in the correct position of when you first made contact?
You mean, when we first made contact, it was down here?
Where the
That's-
post it is that
yes.
says car?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that shows where it was when you first made contact.
Yes, ma'am.
If you look so far, show this jury on this diagram the route you took to come in.
So I believe the parking area where we parked is somewhere around here, and I came up down over here to right about this point.
You came through the carport in between the cars that were parked
Yes.
to right there? And who is that in front of you?
To the left there is Evans, and to the right is Hopkins.
Talk by still. We're just gonna move up on it.
Is this the small talk you said you guys were having on what to do?
Yes, ma'am.
Discussing whether or not the car is occupied?
Yes,
At that point, you don't know if it's occupied?
not for certain.
And it is what, Officer Hopkins talks about approaching the vehicle, and at that point, Officer Hess says he'll pull the squad car up. Do you know why he said that?
Objection, speculation.
Sustained. Asking another question.
Do you have an opinion as to why he did that?
Objection, speculation.
It's overruled. If it's based on what you perceived, go ahead.
I believe that he pulled that car up to provide us cover from the vehicle.
Why would cover have been important?
In the event that if there was occupants at the time, had they gotten out and it started shooting at us, or if the vehicle did start moving, it would provide some type of hard cover for us to be behind.
Something for you to get behind.
Yes, ma'am.
I guess it's not occupied.
Well, last comment was a male. I can't tell the
Hold on.
Peter, do you see anybody?
Do you remember why you said, oh, hold on?
I'm thinking because they were talking about approaching the vehicle, and I didn't exactly think that was the safest move at this point.
Why?
Because we had no idea what, we couldn't see in the car because the windows were tinted in fog, and we had no idea what was inside.
And so you had concerns about how to approach.
Yes.
You see your hand?
At that point, what did you hear on the body cam?
That the vehicle is occupied.
Why is that significant?
Because for our next plan of action would have to obviously be different than if it wasn't occupied.
Is it important to note that it's occupied and the occupants are not complying with your orders?
Yes,
Do you guys continue to give orders and try to get them to comply?
yes.
Hands up! Let me see your hands.
There's a bunch of shit back there. Okay.
Todd? Is that you saying there's a bunch of stuff back there?
Yes,
Why is that important?
because it just affected our ability to see even more, and well, in a minute, I say that it appears that there's somebody they're in the backseat moving around.
Okay. And is it fair to say that you officers are trying to share information with each other as you were surrounding the car?
Yes,
And you're letting them know there's stuff in there that's going to be hard to see?
yes.
Get your hands up! Open the door! Help, police!
What do you think?
Now, police! Show me your hands!
He's moving in there now.
Show me your hands! Put your hands outside the vehicle right now!
Okay, and we hear you say he's moving in there now. Why do you say that?
Because I could see a shadow moving around in the backseat of the car, or what I believe to be the backseat of the car.
Do you know whether or not it's the passenger or driver moving around?
No.
Do you know how many people are in that car?
At the time, I don't recall, but just based off of what I just heard, then I believe that Officer Allen said there was two.
Okay, Officer Aller said last known there was 2. Could you see 2 people in there?
I could not, no.
Could you clearly see what they were doing when they were moving?
No.
Is that concerning to you?
Yes.
Why?
Excuse me. Because we just have no idea what they're doing. I mean, if they're loading a weapon, or if they're gonna try and escape, or if they're gonna think about running off on foot, we have no idea what's going on.
Are you wondering why on earth they're not just getting out of the car?
Yes.
Is this a situation that is dangerous to officers?
Yes.
Why?
Because of all the unknowns. We have no idea what they're doing, but we know they're not complying.
The longer it goes without them complying, does your tension rise?
Yes.
Why?
Because the more and more that we're giving commands, and the more and more that they're moving around, and the less, and they're still not responding, the more it raises our level of awareness, just due to the dangers of all the unknowns, and it continues to build.
I'm gonna have you turn a little to make sure the jury can hear you. It continues to build the longer you guys give commands and they don't comply.
Yes.
Fair to say that you are trying to brace for whatever may come next.
Yes.
You don't know what will come next, do you?
No.
Are you concerned about what comes next?
Yes. I think I even said, like, what do you, because we didn't know what we knew we shouldn't approach the vehicle, but we didn't know what we should do next at this point.
When you say, what do you think?
Yeah.
Where do we go from here?
Yeah.
Somebody's moving around the back.
Hands up.
Still pause there. Now, you said somebody's moving around and then you repeat it in a louder voice. Why do you do that?
To make sure that everybody there heard me, that there is movement in the vehicle.
And right after that, what do we see the other officers do?
Take a step back.
Do you know exactly where everybody's positioned at this time?
No. The only person I knew was by me was Hawkins.
And where was Hopkins?
I believe he's like right here on my right shoulder.
Turn around, face the jury.
I believe he's like right here on my right, I guess my 4 o'clock.
And where are you?
I am somewhere in this area right here.
Why are you over there?
So I can keep, Hawkins and I were over here, then we could keep an eye on the driver door in case the driver exited the vehicle.
Why are you guys, and this is my word, why are you fanned out behind the car?
So that way we can have as much of the, we could observe as much of the vehicle as possible, especially when we're not getting compliance with our commands. We want to be able to see, make sure no one's coming out that driver's side door or the back door, and catches us by a surprise.
While you all the time continue to give commands to get out of the vehicle.
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't see her.
That's 143, check out making disturbance, 2403 Northwest, and black male refused to stay away from property. When it's like, right on the street. Watch out.
Okay, what did we just see there?
The car turned on. Hess pulled the car up to close that gap, and then the car backed into his car, school police car. So
Do you know why he pulled up to close the gap?
Just speculation.
Tactical considerations or things that you perceive, go ahead and answer the question if you, otherwise don't get into his head, all right?
Don't
Okay.
speculate, do you know why?
I don't know why. I don't have an opinion.
Okay? In your opinion, what was your opinion?
To close that gap so that the car couldn't come back out to where we were kind of all positioned.
To close that gap so it couldn't come to where officers are?
Yes.
Okay. And where are you at this time?
Right about here. I think when the car turned on, we kind of moved back this way.
Okay, so you're back here, and then when the car turns on, you back up a couple of steps?
Yes.
Okay, and you've said that Officer Hopkins is at your 4 o'clock?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead and turn around to the jury and show at your 4 o'clock.
Probably close, well, not closer to me, but in the direction of the court reporter.
Behind you,
Yes.
if you'll rewind it 10 seconds.
Northwest and select me or choose to stay away. Happy. When it's
Pause.
right on.
Okay, at this moment, where are you standing?
Probably right here.
Watch out, watch out, watch out.
Pause. Did you note the stolen car's lights at that point?
Did I note them?
Yes.
Yes,
What did you note about them?
that they reverse lights came on.
Why is that important?
Because that means that the vehicle's gonna be coming backwards toward us again.
What do you do when you note the reverse lights?
I crossed in front of Hopkins and tried to get over behind the police car.
We hear you say, watch out, watch out, watch out. Who are you speaking to?
Hopkins, because he had his gun pointed at the vehicle, and I may have touched his arm, kind of, so I didn't cross in front of the mobile.
So he's at your 4 o'clock and you're about to walk in front of his gun, so you're letting him know you're gonna go across?
Yes, ma'am.
You're announcing to him you're about to cross in his line of fire.
Yes.
Why are you doing that? Why are you telling him you're about to cross in front of him?
So that he can lower his gun, or no, he's aware that I'm gonna move in front of him.
And why are you moving?
Because that car is starting to come back.
Are you alarmed?
Yes.
Why?
Because the car is starting to come back to where I'm standing at.
And why would that alarm you?
Because I'm worried about getting hit by the car or something else happening.
What all are you considering when you're making that determination?
About the car moving?
Do you think that car is a danger to you?
Yes.
Based on what?
What had just happened, from this time we got there till this moment right now.
What exactly about what had just happened?
Us giving commands and not getting compliance, and then the vehicle turning on and reversing and striking the police car and trying to go through the fence.
The act of the vehicle turning on, why is that important?
Well, because we're telling them to get out of the car and show us their hands, and the car comes on.
The fact of the car going in gear and hitting the police car, why is that important?
Well, in my opinion, it showed, when it struck the vehicle, it was.
What is your opinion?
My opinion is that when it hit the vehicle, I remember it being, it was loud, and
Jarring?
yeah, I'd say jarring is a good word, but then, it was alerting and definitely raised my level of awareness in the situation.
What happened next?
The car went in drive and went through the fence.
Okay. What did it appear the car was doing when it hit the fence?
When it hit the fence, I remember it kind of, it was loud when it hit the fence, and the car kind of rose up a little, and I believe it was trying to get to the fence. Sorry.
You had to talk to the jury.
The car, when it hit the fence, it kind of, the front end kind of went up a little, and it was fairly loud, and I believe that the car was trying to get through the fence at that point.
If the car had succeeded in running down the fence, what would you have done?
Got on the radio, broadcasted to other elements that were in the area, maybe call for the helicopter, maybe try to get back to our cars and go around the block or get out to the alleyway and see where they were going.
You wouldn't have shot?
No.
Why?
Because the car driving away from us is not a danger to anybody there.
But it is one of those things that you considered in your evaluation of the situation?
Yes.
Why?
Because it shows just the willingness to do, the driver's willing to do anything to get away from the situation.
What does the driver do when it can't get through the fence?
Puts the vehicle in reverse again, turns the wheel to go around the front end of the police car.
Is that car rolling, or is somebody's foot applying pressure to the gas?
When it hits the fence, when it comes back the second time,
Either.
the foot's on the gas.
Both, or which one? When it hits the fence, is somebody applying pressure to the gas?
Somebody is applying pressure to the gas.
When it shifts into reverse and goes back towards The squad car, is somebody's foot on the gas?
I do not know.
Does it appear it's merely rolling, or does it appear that it is accelerating?
In my opinion, from what I remember, it appeared to be going faster than what it looks like in the video, so.
You say that, it's one of the things you noted when you first watched your body cam,
Yes,
that in real life it felt faster,
yes,
felt scarier,
yes,
like it was a closer call.
yes, ma'am.
As you move over, where do you go? Show us on the diagram.
So I'm somewhere in this area. Hopkins is here. I live in front of Hopkins and I come right over this way.
Okay, and where are your fellow officers?
At this point, the only person I know is Hopkins, that's where I've last seen him, and I have no idea where anybody else is at this point.
Do you know officers are over here?
Yeah, I would assume that they were in that area, but I have no idea where they were at.
You don't know who is where?
No.
Why?
Because when that car's turned on, you kind of zero in on the car, but I'm not, that's what the threat is at that point, so I'm very concentrated. It's called tunnel vision, where you kind of circle in on the threat, I guess, so to speak. And so everything else is kind of, your brain's processing what's happening in that little range, not what everything else is going on.
Have you run like security, their uniform and orange?
We'll back it up 10 seconds. And go.
Have you run like security, their uniform and orange?
Okay. At this point, do you know who is where?
No.
At some point during this time, did you fire your weapon?
Yes.
Do you know when?
When the car kind of came back past the front end of the police car,
In the first volley of shots or the second?
on that first volley,
Do you know how many times you fired your weapon?
just one.
Why did you fire your weapon?
Because when that car came across the front of that car, I was concerned that Hopkins was still behind the vehicle, but at the time I pulled the trigger, I believe he was still standing there.
Where were you? Where did you believe Hopkins was?
Right over here, this area.
Why did you think he was there?
Because when I crossed in front of him, I mean, it was just seconds later is when the car came across the front of the police car. And like I said before, when that car's coming back, I'm concentrating on that car, not on where everybody's at.
Why did you make the decision to pull the trigger?
Because I was worried Hopkins was going to get hit by that car.
Did you believe that Hopkins would get hit by that car?
Yes,
Why did you believe that Officer Hopkins would get hit by that car?
because the last place I saw him was directly in the path of that vehicle, right there.
Were you considering the totality of the circumstances?
Yes.
What all were you considering?
The disregard for verbal commands, the hitting of the police car, trying to get away through the fence, and then coming around the front end of the police car at the second time, were all part of the consideration.
Did you believe that that car was being used as a deadly weapon?
Given the totality of the circumstances, I think it was that the driver was willing to use it anywhere necessary to get away from the situation.
Well, how about the idea that Officer Hopkins should just get out of the way?
I mean, when that's all going on, I'm not even processing, and I'm not looking to see where Hopkins is at, and I have no idea if he did move or not.
And you have mere seconds to make your decision?
Yes,
And seconds ago, you believed he was behind that car?
yes,
Did you really believe he was behind that car?
yes,
Are you sure?
yes.
What did you base that belief off of?
Jack, to ask and answer, this is like the third time this has been asked.
All right. No more sidebar comments. I am going to sustain the objection.
Where was Officer Hopkins the last time you saw him?
Right here.
When you were initially behind the car, when the car started, where were you?
Somewhere over here.
Why did you pick that particular location?
If I remember correctly, there's some type of like a phone pole or something there, or maybe a tree to be behind. I can't remember 100%. And like I said, so I can keep an eye on the driver's side door of the vehicle.
You'll take your seat. Officer Kempell, did you even know that Officer Hess was behind you at one point?
No.
You didn't know that he was ever behind you?
Officer Hess was behind me? No.
Did you know where your fellow officers were that entire time?
No.
Where was all of your attention?
On that vehicle?
And the way you orient yourself of where you were that night was based on something being over there, a tree or a phone pole?
Yes.
Why would you pick that?
Well, because in the event that the passenger or the occupants of the vehicle got out and there was some type of altercation there, that at least it was some type of cover for me to be behind for protection.
And you wanted any cover possible?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what is marked, States Exhibit 16. Do you see a tree right there?
Yeah, that.
Would that be consistent of what you were trying to take cover behind?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that the first time you've ever seen this picture?
Yes, ma'am.
But you've always told me you were trying to be behind a tree.
Yes, ma'am.
You've always told me you were trying to be behind whatever cover you could.
Yep.
Does that look like the accurate place of where you and Officer Hopkins were when the car turned on?
I believe so, yes.
And who was closer to the fence, you or him?
I was.
And who moved first?
Me.
Were you worried about Officer Hopkins that night?
Yes.
Do you remember being worried about his positioning?
Are you in terms of just in general? When the car turned on, yes. I was obviously concerned about where he was.
Now, you've told this jury about why you chose to pull your trigger. My question to you, how many times did you shoot?
Just once.
Why did you stop?
After I pulled the trigger, I noticed right in front of me, I don't know the numbers, but all I saw was the back of Hess's back, and it says Dallas Police on it. And we're trained when you fire, obviously not shoot from behind another officer because it's dangerous. And so I stopped shooting and I moved over to cover.
So you stated that you didn't even know where officers were, but your focus was on the car. You made a decision to pull your trigger. What made you notice another officer?
When I fired and I saw him standing there.
And he was in front of you?
Yes, it was definitely close.
If he had not been in front of you, would you have continued to shoot?
Until the threat was stopped, yes.
Until the threat was stopped?
Yes.
When you stopped shooting, was the car still moving?
Yes.
How do you know?
Because after I fired, I moved over to cover, and I believe that's when the vehicle had stopped stopped initially. So from when I fired to when I moved and got behind cover, I believe is right when the vehicle stopped.
Okay, so from the time you shot the first time there was a volley of shots.
Yes.
And then you remember that car was still moving as you were taking cover?
I believe so, yes.
Why were you taking cover after the first volley of shots?
Because where I was standing at, where I'd moved to, was probably, if that vehicle would have ended up turning towards where I was standing, would have been the only area for it to drive through.
And after the first volley of shots, that car was still moving?
Yes.
And you thought it was a continued threat?
Yes.
So at that point, you took cover?
Yes.
Were you looking at everything that had happened that night in order to make that decision?
Yes,
How fast were things going through your mind?
very fast. You know, when you watch this on video, everything seems very slow, but when you're out there, everything's happening very quickly.
Do you take the decision to pull the trigger on your weapon lightly?
No,
Why?
because using deadly force is always what is the last thing anybody wants to do in a situation, and it's last resort.
And you guys are told that you are not supposed to pull your trigger unless you yourself, another officer, or a citizen is in immediate danger of death or serious bodily injury, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
You're also told not to shoot into vehicles
Yes, ma'am.
unless those situations occur.
Yes, ma'am.
In your belief, had those situations occurred when you pulled the trigger?
I believe so, yes.
How strongly do you believe that?
Strong enough that I shot as well.
And you were still currently a Dallas police officer?
Yes.
Pass the witness.
Cross-examination?
Thank you. So you are still a Dallas police officer?
Yes, sir.
Weren't you disciplined for this shooting?
Yes, I was.
Okay. What violations were you sustained for from the shooting?
I believe I don't know the exact terminology, but placing a citizen in unnecessary danger and violation of deadly force policy.
Violation of the deadly force policy, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So the Dallas Police Department found that you were in violation when you used deadly force in this situation, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about when you guys initially got to the scene. You stated that you were not aware if there was anybody inside the vehicle, isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
So you guys kind of spread out in a line behind the victim and you gave verbal commands, right?
Yes, sir.
Would you say that initial, when you guys were initially positioned, did you know where everybody was at that point?
Not exact locations, no, sir.
Okay, do you feel like you guys had enough cover at that point and you were safe as far as the position where you were giving the verbal commands initially?
Yes, sir.
Okay, why?
Well, in that situation, we really didn't have much to work with. You know, before the police car came up, we were kind of back over by this pole over here on the parking cover, but there wasn't much out there to utilize for cover, so to speak.
Okay, and then when the defendant pulls the squad car up and you move forward, was that more or less safe based upon where you initially were?
In my opinion, at that time, probably more safe.
It was more safe to move closer?
Well, we're always trained to use the vehicles for cover protection, so I think just instinctually we kind of moved over there.
Okay, and then you testified that as you guys moved closer, Officer, I believe Hopkins, moved forward to pull the car door in.
Yes, sir.
And you stated that wasn't necessarily the best or the safest option at that point, right?
Yes, sir.
And that's because you didn't know who or what was inside the vehicle at that time, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What was the need to rush at that point to get close to the vehicle and make entry?
I don't think there was no need to rush, but I do think that had that door been open, it would have given us a better vantage point to see inside of the vehicle.
Okay. But again, at that time, you guys didn't know who or what was inside the vehicle?
No, we did not.
So it's very dangerous to try to do that at that point, not knowing what's inside, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Why not just wait? Are you guys trained on that situation where you have a vehicle and you don't really know what's inside?
That exact thing, you know, at some point, had the vehicle not turned on, we probably would have gotten more cover out there and been able to get access to what we call a shield, which is a shield that you see you carry, provides us protection to approach the car, and maybe try to get up to the driver's side door to actually, you know, look into the cars and do it in a safe manner.
All right. So let's talk about when the vehicle comes back and strikes the squad car. After the shooting, the defendant gets on the radio and he states that they rammed the squad car twice. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
How many times did you see that vehicle collide with the squad car?
Only one time.
Okay, so that would be untruthful, correct?
I can't answer to what Officer Hess may or may not have seen or believed.
With regard to what actually took place, that did not take place, right?
No, sir.
So at some point, you and Officer Hopkins move over to the back side of the vehicle. Why'd you move over to that side?
So we could try and see on the driver's side of the vehicle to see if anybody got out of that door.
And at some point, obviously, the vehicle begins to back the second time.
Yes, sir.
And you move out of the way, right?
Yes, sir.
Why'd you move?
Because I was worried about being struck by that vehicle.
In fact, you start to move from behind the vehicle before you even start to come back. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so you were well out of the way of the vehicle at the point in time that the defendant started to use deadly force on the vehicle. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
All right. Did you have to dive out of the path of the vehicle?
No, sir.
Did you have to jump out of the path of the vehicle?
No, sir.
Did you have to run out of the path of the vehicle?
No, sir.
Okay. Did the vehicle slam on the gas and come back at a high rate of speed at that time?
Not from watching the video, no.
So at that point, you testified that you felt as though Officer Hopkins was still in fear or was in danger of being struck by the vehicle?
Yes, I still believed he was behind the vehicle.
Okay. Are you familiar with you guys' general orders on firing into moving vehicles?
Yes, sir.
What is your first, what are you trained to do first in that situation?
Get out of the way.
And that's what you did, correct?
Yes, sir.
And there was nothing stopping Officer Hopkins from doing that as well, correct?
Not that I'm aware of.
And you guys are, you testified that you're, in that situation, you're focused on the vehicle, correct?
Yes, sir.
So you would expect all the officers to be focused on the vehicle and vigilant as to their position to the vehicle.
I can't answer for what everybody else is going to do out there.
Okay, but that's how you're trained though, correct? If you feel as though there's a threat, you testify to this, you're going to be zoomed in on the threat, right?
Yes, sir.
And you would expect and trust that the other officers are doing that as well, because that's how you're trained, right?
I would hope so.
And you would expect them to adhere to your general orders to move out of the way of the vehicle.
I would hope so.
And so at that point, you decided to use deadly force, correct? You shot one time.
Yes, sir.
Did you realize that the defendant had fired multiple shots before you fired?
I did not realize that he had fired.
Okay. By my count, he fired 5 times before you fired your first shot. And you're telling this jury that you didn't hear those gunshots?
I do remember hearing gunshots, but I don't remember. I did not know who was shooting or where it was coming from.
Okay. Did you see a weapon inside the vehicle prior to you shooting?
No, sir.
Did you see anybody with a gun pointing out the window at you?
No, sir.
Did you see anybody shooting from the vehicle at you?
No, sir. Not that I can recall.
All right. So you heard the gunshots, but you didn't know which officer was firing. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I remember hearing them.
Okay. Prior to you shooting.
Now, when I shot, I remember hearing other shots.
Okay. So prior to your one shot, you didn't hear any gunshots before that.
I don't remember.
Okay. Are you familiar with the term sympathetic fire?
I am.
What does that mean?
Essentially, that means that if somebody else is firing, that another person may fire in sympathy because they believe that the other person, I guess I'm not 100% sure of the terminology, but essentially that I fired because Hess fired is what I think is what you're trying to say.
So basically, you fired because you perceive somebody else firing, not necessarily because you perceive that there's a difference, right?
No, sir. I believe that when I fired, I believe that Hopkins was still behind the vehicle.
Okay. You fired one time and you stopped. Why did you stop shooting?
Because after I fired, I noticed Hess was standing very close to the line of where I was at.
Okay. And then after you stopped shooting, you stated that you moved to cover. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What cover did you take at that point?
To the left of where I was at, there was a I believe, a pickup truck, and I got behind the back end of that pickup truck.
Okay. I'm gonna show you,
Why don't you mark your spot, Mr. Lewis? It's 12:20. We're going to take a lunch break. Please be back in the jury room, ready to come back in at 1:15. Please do not.
May we approach the schedule?
I'll handle that in just a minute. Please do not do any independent research. Please do not speak about this case, even among yourselves. You guys have been wonderful about doing that this week, and I really do appreciate it. Let's keep it up. All rise for the jurors. Sheriff, don't let him leave until I come and talk to him, all right? Ms. Madsen, Mr. Lewis. Okay. Y'all may be seated. Court's in recess. Ms. Wood, please take a break.